downloaded the Buckeye Leafcast with your host, Andrew T. Evans, with special guest, Chris Stefanick.
Right on, ladies and gentlemen. Rock and roll is here to stay. I have no idea what that means, but it is the Buckeye Leafcast. You've gone and done it again, downloaded another edition of the show with your hosts, Andrew T. Evans. And I'm sure right now the Intergalactic Buckeye Fan is not zipping around the galaxy proclaiming how proud he is to be a Buckeye fan. After Saturday night's debacle in the desert. And Chris, let's just start from the beginning and go to the end. First of all, welcome. Thank you for coming on this edition of the show, as you always do, sir.
Oh, my pleasure.
How we doing down there on the East Coast today? After we've had a couple of days, so pretty much to let this sink in.
I'm doing pretty good. I'm upbeat, positive, looking forward to possible changes coming forward, and but me, I'm a glasses half full kind of guy, so.
Well, I'm glad that at least someone on this podcast is going to be the voice of reason, logic, and have a steady hand, because I'm currently doing this podcast on the roof of my house. I'm near the ledge, Chris. I'm not going to lie. I am near the ledge after Saturday night's ass-kicking there in Glendale, Arizona in the PlayStation Fiesta Bowl. Chris, the Buckeyes took on the Clemson Tigers in the national playoff semifinal game for the right to go play Alabama in the national championship down in Tampa on the 9th of this month. And final score, number 2 ranked Clemson Tigers, 31. The 3rd ranked Ohio State Buckeyes, 0.
Yep,
Chris.
big ouch.
Failed to score one damn point in the game, had opportunities to score, were not able to even notch one single point on the scoreboard. And it was pretty much ugly from the word go, at least from an offensive standpoint. So, Chris, as we normally like to do, I like to get your version, your take on the game, what you saw. I mean, usually I like to say, hey, what was good, what was bad, right. Your thoughts on how Ohio State played. But I really don't think that there is going to be a point in what you're saying was good, at least from an offensive standpoint. I mean, there were some good things I think Ohio State can look forward to and take into next year. Sure. But just spit it out there. Talk me down from the ledge that I am currently on right now. And, what was your take on the game? Obviously, we're going to hear some things offensively that were not good. Hopefully some good things. Hopefully you saw a few things from the offensive standpoint that we can at least maybe say, okay, yeah, there were some points that we can at least say, okay, yeah, that was good, or at least that was a positive takeaway from this severe ass kicking that the Buckeyes took.
Yeah, well, if you're wanting me to talk you off the ledge, then we probably need to not talk about the game that just happened Saturday night. I don't really have a lot of good things to say about that. My good things to say as far as positive outlook going forward is there's other things that we can talk about a little later. But first we'll recap the game, then we'll get to that. So the game itself, the offense was abysmal. And, in retrospect, we could have saw this coming. The offensive line has gotten worse as the year went on. They just gave up 8 stinking sacks to Michigan. Just the previous game, 8 sacks. That's mind-boggling to me. Why are we surprised that their Ohio State's offense was dominated by Clemson's defense when it's like their defensive line has NFL guys all across the front, and it's going against a team that's just been a sieve versus anyone who's had like a decent defense? I'm talking about like the Michigan States, the Penn States, Michigan have pretty much made this offense look bad. So. Did I expect Urban Meyer to get his first ever shutout, in 100 and some games, 80, 90, I don't know, whatever it is? No, of course I didn't expect that. Or, Ohio State to be shut out in the bowl for the first time since like 1920. Yeah, it sounds like I'm just like pulling a number out of the air, but that's actually the number. Since 1920 was the last time they were shut out in a bowl.
That's a legitimate stat.
Yeah, and so yeah, it's not good, and it doesn't all fall on the offensive line. They actually protected a lot better in this game than they did versus Michigan, and especially versus Penn State. Penn State, it was just like a freaking matador up there, but. When they did, it's like when the offensive line wasn't working, the next was the wide receivers. Most of the time they weren't getting open, and the few times they did get open, they dropped the ball. I counted 3 or 4 drops. And every one of the drops was at a point when it was like on a 3rd down, and it would have picked it up. One of them, Noah Brown, would have went in to score. That I don't know,
wide open.
Yeah, that one in the second half. He had green grass in front of him, between him and the end zone. He was going to score. So, another one, it was a 3rd down. JT hits Samuel in the hands. He tips it up in the air, and it ends up being an interception.
Yep.
That's not on JT. For the most part, I thought JT played well. He just had no supporting cast. There was like one time, if you remember, they were never trying to go down the field until in the second half they finally started to take some deep shots, and they got back-to-back pass interference calls. Well, on one of those, it was Benjamin Victor, right? He was open. He was open, and JT dramatically underthrew him, and then that allowed the defensive back to catch up, and hence the pass interference. But so JT had his moments as well. But I thought overall, JT had nothing to support him, and including from the coaching. The play calling was abysmal. I'm like, really? This is what you came up with? You had all that time off, and this is what you came up with. There was no creativity, zero creativity. And what happened to the running the ball? It was like 21 of the first 27 plays were called passing plays. Some of them ended up being JT running for his life and ended up being a running play. But 21 of the first 27, I'm like, this is a running team. They've not passed the ball well all year. Why are you not going to your strength? They're actually a pretty good. At one point in the game, I could not believe I was saying this, but I was like, "Where's the zone read? Can we get the zone read? This is your bread and butter play."
That's what you texted to me at one point and said, "Dude, where you actually said that exact same thing. Where is the bread and butter? I can't believe I'm actually saying this. Where's the zone read? Where's their bread and butter play?" And I had no answer for you. I had none.
They didn't run the zone read until I think they saw one in the second half. Weber had 5 or 6 carries on the game? Now, granted,
5. Yeah,
considering how many of them were resulting in fumbles, maybe that was a good thing. But since 40% of his carries he fumbled the ball, but yeah, I'm like, the zone read is your number one play. It's one that I hate to see it when it's predictable. When it's like when the other team knows it's coming every time. But at this point, Clemson wasn't going to know it was coming. He could mix it in here and there, and it would have probably been pretty good. They're pretty good at it, which is why it's the bread and butter play. They do it a lot, and they have a lot of success with it. They just, I don't know what they were thinking, the coaches. And they when they did run, they would try to go outside all the time, and that just wasn't working. Clemson was too fast for that. They're doing these little screens, like jet screen kind of plays. That got them pretty much nothing the entire game. I think that almost every one of those ended up being a loss. Play calling was terrible. I don't know. What did you see?
Pretty much everything that you saw. I was absolutely, first of all, offensive play calling, just, I mean to tell you.
They got outcoached.
So, here we go. All right, I am getting closer to the ledge the more I think about this. I was absolutely so just mystified, horrified, stupefied, just furious at the offensive play calling.
Andy, think about it. What have you seen from Ed Warner and Tim Beck that has led you to believe we'd see anything different than what we saw?
Nothing.
So, Nothing. I wasn't You're really right. shocked. I wasn't shocked. I was pissed, but I wasn't shocked.
I guess that's the thing. And I'm not shocked either. Absolutely not. I'm not shocked one bit that we saw the absolute, you just said it, lack of creativity, any sort of, forward thinking from Ed Warner at all in this game. When Ohio State came out, okay, they opened up with the ball in the game. And when they came out on the first play and emptied the backfield and had a 5-wide set, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me. This is how you're going to open up the game, Ohio State. This is what your big creative plan to get your offense going is to ask JT to throw the football when, like you said, all year we have seen the offensive line productivity decrease. It seems like they've gotten worse. Your bread and butter is to run the football. You are the top-ranked rushing offense in the entire Big Ten with like almost 260 yards a game. You've got a 1,000-yard running back in Mike Weber. And now, granted, yes, hindsight being 2020, he did not have he had a terrible game. I mean, he had the worst game he had all year. Had at least a couple of fumbles, one of which he lost early in the third quarter. Had a drop there. In fact, that first offensive series of the game had that drop. He was wide open out in the flat. Had he caught it, I don't necessarily know if he would have gotten a first down because I think it was like 3rd and long at that point. But
it looked like he was going to.
It
was certainly pretty. He would have been close, I think. If he didn't get it, he would have been real close.
Yeah, I mean, it's 3rd and I'm going back now. I'm looking at the stats. It's 3rd and 8 on that play, and he's out wide open in the flat. Looked like if he wouldn't have gotten the first down, like you said, he probably would have gotten pretty damn close because he was pretty wide open and just drops the ball, just lets it go, doink, right off of his hand. So certainly, yeah, JT, you definitely need people to be able to produce for you. And there were times where JT looked bad throwing the ball, like you said, that one to Benjamin Victor that allowed a pass interference call, thankfully. But my thing really is that Ed Warner did not give this offense a glimmering hope whatsoever in his play calling. It was terrible. Yep. You are the best rushing offense in the Big Ten, and you line up the first play of the game and say, well, we're going to catch them off guard. Guess what we're going to do, guys? We're going to throw. But then they line up in a 5-wide set. If you're going to throw and you want to catch Clemson off guard, do a play action. Throw for 5 or 6 yards. Do a quick little slant. Do something that you haven't shown all year long that, hey, we're going to throw the ball, but we're not going to line up and throw the ball like you've seen us try and throw the ball all year long. And Ed Warner had absolutely no comprehension of what to do to try and get this team yards and to be productive. I mean, absolutely no creativity. He's not an offensive mind. And you guys had a month to get ready for this game and to come up with some new things, come up with some wrinkles, get creative. Yes, we know Clemson's got a good defense. We know their defensive line is stacked, and pretty much everybody on the defensive line and some linebackers are going to the NFL. We know this. So get creative and say, well, what can we do to counterbalance Clemson's prolific pass rush? What can we do to counteract them coming off of the edge and blasting our right tackle in Isaiah Prince, who's gotten shellacked all year long? What can we do to shore some things up and move the football, take control of this game offensively, and put some points on the board? And there was none of it. Yeah. None of that happened in this game. Well, Ed Warner was absolutely. I mean, seriously, Chris. Boy, this ledge is. I'm looking down here right now, and it's a long way, baby. Ed Warner. If Urban Meyer retains Ed Warner to be the offensive coordinator this upcoming season, I may have to go to the dark side and root for Michigan or something, dude, because Ed Warner has absolutely no business whatsoever running an offense. None. And he proved it. He proved it on New Year's Eve.
Right. Yeah. The offense was dynamic. The offense was impressive in 2014. And 2015, everybody's back. The only thing that changed, I guess Devin Smith wasn't back, but other than that, the only thing that changed was Tom Herman was gone. And since then, Tom Herman was the quarterback's coach. JT, his best year was his freshman year, his last year with Tom Herman. Since Tom Herman has left, he's regressed.
Yep.
So, Tim Beck, Ed Warner, something's got to change. And here's the thing that why I'm optimistic going forward is in the press conference, Urban was like, "This will not happen again." He's like, "This will not happen again." That to me doesn't sound like somebody who is going to sit pat, who isn't going to make changes. And they said to him, they brought up, the Clemson 2013 game, which after that it cost him to have like a sea change for his defense because the defense was letting him down at that point through the 2012, 2013. The offense was carrying the team and the defense was down. He made changes, and the very next year, going to Chris Ash, they won a national title. It was at that point, it was so glaringly obvious that what they were doing was not successful. They had to do something. So, when I'm sitting here back looking on the last 2 years, as far as I'm concerned, you can put at the feet of Ed Warner and Tim Beck, they blew our shot at 2 more national titles because, 2015, everybody was back from that 2014 team, minus Devin Smith. But, with everybody else they had back, including, possibly the best football player on the planet in Zeke Elliott, they should have been better than what they were the year before. And they were clearly not. The offense has not looked good since Tom Herman left. So the word is from program insiders that Urban Meyer has been on the phone with Kevin Wilson. Kevin Wilson, former head coach at Indiana. Kevin Wilson, offensive mastermind. Kevin Wilson, a guy who his offenses were dynamic, were very creative, took players that don't have nearly the same talent as an Ohio State team has, and was putting up numbers as good or better than Ohio State offensively in the Big Ten. So if he can bring in Kevin Wilson or somebody else that's also better than Warner and Beck, right? Somebody else who's worthy of being given the reins to Ohio State's offense, one of the premier programs in the country, then I think things can turn around quickly. Just like 2013 to 2014, the defense went from being a weakness to being a strength. They win the national title. After that 2014 season, when Ohio State dominated Alabama in the playoffs, Nick Saban he saw what had happened. He saw his defense get exposed, and he had a big change. He went out and changed the kind of guys he was recruiting for his defense, went with faster guys, went with, opposed to the big plotting guys. And the very next year, he has a national title.
Yep.
So, I think this is a national championship quality caliber of defense the last 2 years, and the offense let him down. So, on the downside, Warner and Beck, cost us at least a shot at the national title. But the good news is it was so bad that it's going to force Urban to do some changes. And I would also say I don't think that it all just falls completely on the play calling and the on Tim Beck and Warner. The offensive line has been the worst offensive line of the Urban Meyer era since Strudwada came in. The offensive line has been a strength under Ed Warner the whole time until the very first time he leaves from being the position coach of the offensive line falls apart. So I'm calling out Coach Stud, and I'm calling out Coach Zach Smith because the wide receivers have not been good the entire time that he's been here outside of Devin Smith. Pretty much you take away Devin Smith, who's just an uncanny talent, a guy who just had a huge knack for making those big plays, for going up and winning the 50-50 balls, right? You take away Devin Smith, and what has Zach Smith done with the talent he's been given? I'm not seeing growth. I'm not seeing development. Last year, the offensive passing game was abysmal. Mike Thomas goes to the NFL, and he's looking like a Pro Bowler as a rookie. So
it's always nice having a guy named Drew Brees throwing you the football, too.
That helps. But that guy's talented. He is really talented.
Oh, absolutely.
And Zach Smith is just not getting out of these players. They're not getting open. I think that Noah Brown is going to go to the NFL and be a solid number 2 guy, if not a number 1 guy. He's going to be a good NFL player. And he's just kind of an afterthought. Nobody's scared of him. Clemson's not scared of Noah Brown. They're not scared of it. They worried about Curtis Samuel, and they worried about stopping the pass, about stopping the run, I should say. They were really more about defending the first 10 yards of the field, and they didn't have to worry about anything else. I mean, they showed one stat, I think in the first half, or it might have even been like through the first 3 quarters, Ohio State had only gone downfield for longer than 11 yards. It was like 3 or 4 times. Even attempted it. They'd completed one of them, but they'd only even attempted it 3 or 4 times, and through 3 quarters. And it's like, Clemson doesn't even have to defend more than 10 yards downfield. So
yeah, it's easy to play defense when the opposing offense, is not trying.
Yeah, right.
Seriously.
Yeah. So I mean, here's the good news. Here's why I'm optimistic. One.
All right. Thank you. Please. Yes.
Yeah. One. This got Urban Meyer's attention. He said this will not happen again. Word is he's already on the phone with Kevin Wilson, and there's going to be changes. They're also, I think they're adding a new position, a new assistant coaching position as well. So that gives him one. He wouldn't necessarily even have to fire somebody. He could just reassign people. He could bring in Kevin Wilson and just reassign people. Bring in Kevin Wilson, make him the offensive coordinator. Maybe make him, I don't know if he's a quarterback specialist or not, but he could maybe make him coach the QBs. And then they could have Warner go back to coaching the offensive line. You could have Stud take over his duties at tight ends coach. And I guess make Tim Beck could be offensive assistant. He could be a quality assurance specialist or something like that.
He could be the locker room jockstrap washer.
Yeah, exactly.
That could be his quality control assistant.
Right. Yeah, and you don't have to actually fire anybody if you don't want to. And the guys that are getting demoted will probably look to go elsewhere anyway and just leave naturally. But so there's a lot of things you can do there. And the defense is really strong. I think the defense and the talent level on the team is really strong. It's going to be one of the most talented teams in the country next year. They were the youngest team in the Power 5 this year. Nobody predicted them to go to the playoffs. I mean, I was calling for a 10-2 regular season. So they actually exceeded expectations this year. They were a year early.
Absolutely.
They exceeded expectations, and the one glaring weakness, I think Urban's not going to be able to ignore it now. And on top of that, they have arguably the greatest recruiting class coming in that they've ever had. I mean, as far as average ranking, if you look at the 24/7 average ranking, it's higher than any class ever since they started recording this average ranking stuff. And by a long shot. So they go on a scale of 0 to 1,000, where if you're in the 90, or maybe it's the hundreds, 0 to 100. If you're in the 90s, you're like a 4 or 5 star. 5 stars are 98, 99. 4 stars are 90 to 98, and then that's 3 stars in the 80s and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
Well, they're averaging. I think their average is 96 or something like that. And the previous best average from any school ever, not just Ohio State, any school, was 94. So they're 2 points higher, which is huge in these rankings. Yeah, I mean, what they're doing is impressive in recruiting. And I mean, to put it into perspective, they already have one quarterback, Wade. They're expected to get Okuda and Darnay Holmes. So these are, depending on which ranking service you look at, they're the 1, 2, and 3 cornerbacks in the country. Well, they would be higher ranked. All 3 of them would be higher ranked than essentially any defensive back commit that Ohio State has ever gotten in the past. Now, does that mean they're going to be higher?
Wow.
They're certainly higher than the guy they'd be replacing in Conley and Lattimore. Are they going to end up being better than them? I don't know. We'll see. But
to be seen.
But they're ranked higher. You know what I mean? So, and just across the board, they have so many 5 stars. They have more 5 stars than the rest of the Big Ten together.
I think they have more 5 stars, and like you said, it's all subjective. It depends on the recruiting service that you go by, but I think that they have more blue chip 5-star prospects than any team out there. Period. More than Alabama, more than LSU, Florida, whatever.
Yep. So the recruiting class, they're bringing in, at least on paper, we'll see what happens when they get on the field. But as far as recruiting rankings go, they're bringing in their most impressive class ever, arguably the most impressive class of anyone ever, at least according to the 24/7 rankings. They they're going to be one of the most talented teams in the country again next year. They're going to be more experienced now. They are going to have a lot of guys coming back that were maybe on the edge. That was another bright side of them actually losing now is, if let's say they go out and win the national title. I mean, granted, I'll take the national title and a bunch of guys leaving early any day. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But if they, now that they went out in a lot of more guys, let's say they did go out and win the national title, a lot of these guys that were on the fence would be like, yeah, we just won a national title. I'm going out. A lot of them, they're going to be like, what, I really don't want my last game to be a 31-0, embarrassment. I don't want to go out like that.
And see, that's what's crossed my mind too, is it's going to be interesting now that this happened. How many guys that Ohio State, or that people were projecting as leaving early, the Malik Hookers and the Marshawn Lattimores, Raekwon McMillan, so on and so forth, all these guys, Noah Browns, whatnot. How many of them now want to leave after that game?
Right. I mean, some of them, if you're looking at the on-field production, how can you possibly say Noah Brown, yeah, he's the guy that should be leaving early? I know it's not all about that. Part of it is like the prototype and the body and all of that. But, yeah, a lot of these guys don't have the film to be leaving early. So, some of them have already announced they're coming back. Billy Price is coming back. So that means you're going to have 4 out of 5 starters coming back on the offensive line. That can only help. They only had 2 coming back last year, and it was a disaster. So 4 coming back, I think that's going to be a lot better situation there. Sam Hubbard has announced he's coming back.
Yep.
So, that's really good news.
Billy Price, I believe.
Right. Yeah, Billy Price, Sam Hubbard are both coming back. Worley, I don't know if he's actually officially made the announcement, but the word is he's basically said he's coming back. And essentially JT has said he's coming back. So that's pretty big, and I think a whole lot more guys that were on the fence are probably going to come back. Now, some of them, they're just so stupidly, ridiculously high-ranked that they pretty much have to go. When I'm looking at it, unfortunately, it's like 3/4 of that starting defensive backfield is probably going to go because they're all picked to be first-rounders. What are they really going to gain by coming back? As far as like their draft stock goes, they're not going to gain anything. So, they have like some of the guys have Conley and Lattimore ranked as like the top 2 cornerbacks and Hooker as the number 1 safety, so it's...
Yeah, if that's the case, or who cares about, I want to leave my legacy behind. No, I want to go make money.
Yeah, right. Well,
that's what I'm saying.
Right, and think about like a guy like Lattimore who's had an injury history. He could come back and be injured all next year and, cost himself millions of dollars. This, as far as I'm concerned, This is starting to look like this year was the aberration with Lattimore, So strike while the iron is hot.
Right.
And he even got, I don't know if you saw that, but he got injured in the game and came out. And then when they put him back in, and he was getting abused a little bit when they put him back in. And I think, I never heard really anything about it, so I'm wondering if it was just maybe he had some cramps. Because then later in the game, he was back to looking normal. But at any rate, I was sitting there, I'm like, oh, here we go again, Lattimore injured,
I thought the same thing too, yeah, when I saw him go out, and I'm like, well, at least they got Denzel Ward. They've been playing this 3 cornerback system all year, so it's not like they don't have somebody just as talented who could step in, although it looked to me like Denzel Ward got eaten up a little bit too.
No, I would not say Denzel Ward is just as talented. They were finding him. They were looking to get Michael Thomas on him. Michael Thomas. Who am I thinking? Mike Williams. That's what
Mike Williams, yeah.
Mike Williams will be an NFL player here real shortly too. But yeah, they were looking to get Mike Williams on Denzel Ward, and every time they did, they went to it, and it was working pretty well for him. And that's another question I have: is why is it that this happens, where like you allow the other team to put their best wide receiver on somebody that's not your best cornerback? I don't know if you remember, wasn't it like the Northwestern game? They had like one guy, and I can't remember his name. They had one guy that was a wide receiver that was a threat, and they kept getting him on Damon Arnett over and over, and he had like some ridiculous amount of yards, and I'm like, why do you not just have like Gary and Conley or Lattimore follow him around? Why do you allow them to put him on Damon Arnett? Why do you allow Mike Williams to be put on Denzel Ward? It doesn't make put Gary and Conley on him. Mike Williams is predicted to be the number 1 wide receiver in the draft this spring.
So why don't you have your best damn corner following him around all game? I agree.
Yeah, I that to me that seems like that's a bad coaching decision.
Just
in my
just
mind.
a bonehead. Yeah, just a bonehead.
And they've been
move.
doing it all year. So, well, and speaking of which, and another thing that's just a boneheaded coaching thing, and it revolves around injuries again. Michael Jordan goes out early in the game. Demetrius Knox comes in. He looks completely unprepared. But like the first 2 plays they run when Knox is in, they run it to his side. They put it in a play where it's like he has to make a block or the play is blown up. I'm like, seriously? Did you not think about this at all? Like maybe this is a time to run, off the right tackle kind of thing. I'm like,
see, and that's the thing. I mean, is Ohio State's offensive line really that bad? I mean, they were supposedly loaded with talent. The last several recruiting classes, they've had like offensive lines that were like rivaling any other offensive line recruit that had ever come in, and it looks like they went over to I don't know. I'm trying to think of an analogy to say about this offensive line, and that just proves the point of just the boneheaded play calling. Yep. You've got a true freshman, number 1, that supposedly beat out all these other guys. I don't know about you, but I mean, Michael Jordan I thought was okay this year, but I feel that there had to have been other guys that have been recruited up to this point that certainly would have played better and certainly had more experience than Michael Jordan had this year. And then he gets hurt for a few plays, like you said. Demetrius Knox comes in, and they run it right to him. And I mean, that's just the absolute just stupidity and idiocy that is Ed Warner when thinking about these kinds of things. It's just like, I'm telling you what, Chris, I almost feel like there were some shenanigans going on. And I always say this because I'm a conspiracy theorist kind of guy. But, I mean, seriously, just the decisions that were being made. I mean, was Ohio State scared? Was Urban Meyer scared? I mean, of course they're going to tell you, no, that's absurd. We were never, we just got outplayed. Now, well, you know what, Urban Meyer? You're one of the best damn football coaches in the country. And you and I talked about this, Chris, and I talked about it with several other people throughout the entire month leading up to Saturday night's game, that they've got the X factor. They've got Urban Meyer. He's the coach that knows how to do the big game coaching, and that's what we can rely upon with him, is that he can outthink the other coach, and that's what puts his teams in position to dominate and be successful and win. And I mean to tell you, dude, I was having flashbacks of Jim Tressel when Urban Meyer beat the shit out of him in the 2006 national championship game. Jim Tressel, against USC those 2 years, especially the 1 year that they went out to USC in 2008 and got blown up. I'm having flashbacks of John Cooper in against Michigan and getting destroyed in 93 and 95. And, I mean, it was just like I was totally flabbergasted that things were going the way they were going in this football game, and that you pointed it out, Urban Meyer, never in his career, Chris, had he ever been shut out in a football game, ever. This was the first time ever Urban Meyer and a football team that he had coached failed to score a point. So it's just like, that kind of stuff. I mean, Ed Warner, if all right, I'm getting close to the ledge, dude. You got to talk me back down. I mean, it's just mind-boggling that this team had a month to prepare, and that's what we got.
Right. Well,
that was the end result.
And you mentioned the 2006 national title. This game was reminiscent of that, where Troy Smith had no time to throw. They basically could do nothing. The offensive line just got completely dominated by Florida's defensive ends.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, and remember that season, people were saying, "Look how great the Big Ten is. Ohio State number 1, Michigan number 2, Big Ten best conference in football. Boy, they look good." And then after the bowls, Big Ten overrated, Big Ten's a joke, nothing.
Yeah.
Watch, this year, people were like, oh, the Big Ten's back. They're the best conference out there. They look really strong. Michigan goes and loses to Florida State. Granted, it was a close game, but Florida State was ranked much lower. They were like, what, 12th or 13th? Where
11.
11, okay,
yeah.
Where Michigan was 5 and
6.
was, were they 6? Okay, you're right. Yeah, Penn State was ahead of them.
Because Penn State's 5, yeah. But at any rate, right.
Yeah, and then they lose. I mean, right now, I think what is it, 3 and 5 or something like that is the Big Ten, 2 and 5.
You know what? I was just counting it up the other day.
I think it's 2 and 5. It's 2 and 5.
It's like 2 and 5, something like that.
Yeah, we got 3 games today. We're recording this on January 2nd, so in the morning before the games have played. So we'll see if Wisconsin, Penn State, and Iowa can carry the flag and get to a 500 record. But I doubt it, but yeah, we'll see. You're going to hear, I mean, even if they do get to 500, 5 and 5, the fact that Ohio State and Michigan lost, which regardless of what the rankings are, that's the 2 flagship programs. That's the ones that, if you ask college football fans around the country, who are the 2 best teams in the Big Ten, almost everybody is going to say Ohio State and Michigan, outside of Pennsylvania, right? So
right.
They both lost. I mean, you're going to hear it again. There's going to be like, oh, yeah, Big Ten overrated, all that. Now, does it matter? For Ohio State, I don't think so. I mean, is it hurting Alabama this year that the SEC is the weakest it's been in 10 years? No, it's not. I mean, basically the SEC is worse than the Big Ten after you get past Alabama. And the SEC has 1 team, and after that, they've got nothing. So I don't think it really matters with this playoff format. Back when it was like you had to be in the top 2 to make it, maybe then it mattered what your strength of schedule was. But I think if Ohio State takes care of their business, they don't get left out of the top 4, regardless of how bad the Big Ten is. So for Ohio State, it's not that big of a deal. But just mark my words, you're going to hear it. And for those of you who get sick of the Mark Mays of the world and the like, I mean, the Big Ten haters are going to be out in force.
You know what? I have yet to hear if Mark May, what kind of comments he made. Do you know if he made any after that loss? I mean, he's just got to be just dancing on the ceiling right now that Ohio State just got absolutely mauled like they did.
Yep.
Friggin' jerk. No, but you're absolutely right. And I think that those skeptics out there, they have a right to lambaste the Big Ten. I mean, yeah, your supposed top ranked team in the conference just got worked 31-0. I mean, I mean, how many people out there are going to be like, see, Ohio State didn't deserve it. It should have been Penn State. I mean, I've been seeing this now. People are making comments on social media, left and right. Should have been Penn State. Should have been Ohio State. And that's easy to say after Ohio State gets the crap beat out of them like they do. Let's see what Penn State does against USC today. All right.
Yeah.
If Penn State comes out and beats USC, maybe they should have been. Yeah. Maybe it should have been them.
Oh yeah. I agree with you right there. We'll see what happens, but USC is no joke. So
no, they're not. These are probably 2 of the hottest teams in the country about to square off against each other in the Rose Bowl today in Penn State and USC. Yeah, it should be a good one. I hope that Penn State does not look like complete manure and get waxed against USC. Because if they do, then yeah, the 06 argument is back a decade later that the Big Ten was just overrated. And, I kept telling people, if the Big Ten wants to prove that they are the most dominant conference in the country, then go out and win your bowl games, period. Go out and win your bowl games. Not only win non-conference at the beginning of the season, but then win postseason bowl games. That is the best way to prove that you are the best conference in the country. And right now, they're not. They're not. I mean, they're getting beat up. Like you said, they're 2-5 or 2-6. So it is what it is. But so the Buckeyes obviously have a great recruiting class to look forward to. Hopefully, they have a number of guys that want to return and want to establish that they are the best team in the country by leaving a little bit better of a legacy, if you will. And I think we should be proud of this Buckeye team because you mentioned it, and I think a lot of people have been touching on that they were probably a year early in getting into the college football playoff. And the fact that they made it there on such an inexperienced team as they did, I think it does say something about the players, especially about Urban Meyer and the coaching job that he did. But I think that they have a lot to look forward to. But I'm just hoping that, some changes have got to be made, especially with Ed Warner. He needs to go back to the offensive line. Greg Studerata, whatever, however you say his damn name. He needs to go, coach tight ends. Tim Beck needs to go wash jock straps. Zach Smith, I don't care if you're Earl Bruce's grandson or not. Him too. What is it? What for some reason, all right, and excuse me. You touched on, you brought up all these guys' names, right? Like, this guy needs to go do this, and this guy maybe needs to go do that, and blah, 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 blah. Ultimately, who's the one guy that's hiring all these guys to coach in these positions? Yep. What is Urban Meyer seeing in these guys initially that he feels that they are the right fit to coach on his football team?
Well, he's done pretty good at hiring assistants at Ohio State. That was actually, I don't know how much you followed this, but at Florida, they said Urban, his first go-round of hiring assistants was phenomenal, with guys like Dan Mullen and things like that. But it was when he started losing all of his stud assistants and having to replace them, that's when Florida really started to fall off because he was not finding replacements that were up to speed. And we saw that happen with Tom Herman. He goes out and replaces Tom Herman with Tim Beck, and from the get-go, I was like, "This is a terrible hire." But I was hoping to be proved wrong.
That too.
Yeah, I was hoping to be proved wrong, but not. On the defensive side, he loses Chris Ash, and he makes a phenomenal hire. This was like a home run. People would have mocked you if you said, "Oh yeah, you're going to replace Chris Ash with Shiano." Yeah, right. It was that ridiculously good. Yeah. So he did a good job there, and he did a good job. Tony Alford is a hell of a coach by all accounts, and that was a nice way to. I'm trying to think of the guy that he replaced, but Larry Johnson.
Stan Drayton.
Larry Johnson coming in for Mike Vrabel was a phenomenal hire. That's like a home. That's a home run right there. He is so well respected and does such a great job developing his defensive linemen and such a great job recruiting. Total home run hire there. So he's done a lot better at Ohio State. He's not been perfect, but he's also shown that he can make corrections. With Tressel, he was really loyal to his guys, and it didn't matter how bad the offensive line was. Ballman was going to be the offensive line coach as long as Tressel was here. When the defense went bad and got exposed versus Michigan State and versus Clemson, heck, versus Michigan back in that 2013 season. Remember, Michigan had scored 41 points. That was a bad Michigan team, a bad offensive Michigan team scored 41 points.
Yeah.
And the only reason they won is because they had to stop them from going for two. They're that close to losing. Yep. That defense was bad. He went out. He forced Withers out and brought in Chris Ash. So he's shown the ability. Are you going to make the right hire every time? No. If anybody who's in that position to hire people knows, it's really hard. I'm a guy. I've got several people that work for me, and most of my hires have been great. But when you get a bad one, man, it's a painful mistake, and it's going to happen. It's going to happen inevitably, but you have to move on. So, the thing there is when you make a mistake in hiring, you have to go fix it. So he's shown that he will do that. And the words coming out of his mouth, he's not saying, I'm going to have heads on stakes or anything, but he did say, this will not happen again. And And the word is he's calling Brian Wilson, and there are no openings on his offensive staff. So why is he calling Brian Wilson? Kevin Wilson, sorry.
Well, hey, maybe he needs to bring Brian Wilson in to sing him some good tunes or something, kind of elevate the mood around this.
Right. Yeah, speaking of the mood, I think, in this winter conditioning with Mickey Marotti, there's going to be a few extra trash cans around because it's going to be a little brutal in there.
The smell of vomit will fill the air.
Yeah, I think that this is going to be motivation going forward, and it's not going to be an easy offseason for those Ohio State Buckeyes.
Well, let's hope that this was definitely a learning experience for everybody. I mean, for Meyer, for the players. Let's hope, once again that a lot of these players do want to come back and do want to leave a stamp on their time at Ohio State as being a Buckeye, make it back to the college football playoff, and at least get to the championship game. Now, I mean, that's a whole nother year away. We got at least 8-9 months now until the start of the next football season. But it's just it's a real downer, man. I mean, obviously your team gets blown out, shut out. They just this last month of preparation that just looked like they had no idea what to do. It's just kind of like they were just going through the motions. Hopefully Kevin Wilson, Brian Wilson, Dennis Wilson,
I'll take any Wilson at this point.
Any Wilson would be better than Ed Warner to call the offensive plays. So, let's hope that we do see some changes here in the offseason because obviously, Chris, we know that is what's needed. If this is truly going to be a dominant Ohio State, you do need the best, the brightest, some guys that are going to really know what it takes to win a football game. And I'm not saying that I don't want to completely rag on Ed Warner. Don't get me wrong. I think the guy's a good coach. I really do. Just not in this position. He's just not creative enough to come up with offensive plays and design a format that he knows is going to win. And that was evident in watching the offense against Clemson. Just absolutely zero creativity. In 1 month, you couldn't come up with at least a few wrinkles in the scheme to help at least put them in position to make it a game. So,
yep. Before we close it out, one guy that will be sadly missed, Cam Johnston. And he had a great game to close it out. 7 punts, 49.7 yard average. I don't know. I mean, he looked to me like probably the best punter I've seen wearing the scarlet and gray. And to see that Aussie hang it up and head off, hopefully to an NFL career, we'll see.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to miss Cam Johnston. So.
Yep. Thank you for bringing that up. It's something that didn't even cross my mind. And, yeah, Cam Johnston, I mean, starter for the last 3 years for the Buckeyes. He has been a hell of a punter.
I thought it was 4 even.
Did he start as a true freshman or maybe a redshirt freshman? I think he's a fifth-year senior, if I'm not mistaken.
I swore we've had 4 years of Cam Johnston. Maybe I'm wrong.
Okay. No, I think maybe you're right. I mean, 2013, I think he was the punter then. Isn't that kind of sad? You don't really remember as much about punters and kickers as you do the other guys. But
a
guy like Cam Johnston,
Tyler Durbin.
And it's going to be easy to forget about Tyler Durbin. I didn't even bring that up because thank God I didn't even bring that up. I mean, coming into the Michigan game, dude, Tyler Durbin was damn near automatic.
He had only made one miss through 11 games.
One miss through 11 games, and then in his last 2 games, the 2 biggest games of his career, he misses 4 damn field goals.
Yeah, and he would never played football before this year. So you're right. The 2 biggest games of his career, he misses 4 field goals.
Well, and maybe Urban shouldn't go to the soccer fields looking for a field goal kicker anymore. Recruit a guy who has actually played and kicked at least in the high school level before you start, which he has. I know he's got a kid coming in from New Jersey or something this year.
He's got the number 1 punter in the country's coming in.
Yeah.
He also kicks field goals as well, so we'll see what happens there. But then, what does it say about Nuremberger? when this soccer kid who's never played football before comes in and beats him out. So that's pretty interesting. Let me just look up what this kid is real quick.
Well, don't forget about a kid by the name of Drew Chrisman, who was a U.S. Army high school All-American, and he committed to Ohio State back a couple of years ago. So not sure where this Chrisman kid is at, but, Urban has made the comment unabashedly that he hates kickers. Now, tongue-in-cheek, obviously he doesn't hate the kid,
right.
So much as just he's just not fond of the game coming down to a kicker. And we've seen it before. He'd rather go for it on 4th and 1 in field goal territory and extend a drive and get a touchdown rather than attempt a field goal. And let me tell you what, Urban, you better start liking kickers a little bit more, putting a little more thought into getting some kids who can kick the ball, because if it comes down to it, even just getting 3 points on the board early in the game, 2 straight drives, Tyler Durbin misses field goals. And, they weren't easy field goals, but they were makeable. Sure. And, 2 straight drives he misses. And right there, it could have been at least a 6-3 ball game with a lead, and that can do a lot for the psyche on the other team.
Absolutely. And, for Ohio State, they were kind of hanging their heads after that.
Absolutely. And you can't continue to ask the defense to come out and, keep holding a Clemson offense that has, granted, yes, a guy that threw 15 interceptions on the year, but still nonetheless a guy that had over 4,000 total yards and a buttload of touchdowns. Yeah. You can't continue to try and, corral that guy and expect to win the game. Ohio State had a good defense, but obviously it wasn't that good. But the defense still, Chris, what we wanted them to do, and that was to get some interceptions in the game. They picked them off twice. They forced 2 turnovers. They did what they were asked to do.
I thought the defense played well. This was the best offense they had played all year. And, in modern football, if you hold a team under 30 points, your defense did the job. It's up to your offense to get 30 points. I know Clemson scored 31, but 7 of those came off of an interception on the offense that was returned to the 7-yard line. That's not on the defense. That's on the offense. So they gave up 24 points versus one of the elite offenses in the country, and they were out there the entire game. And I think Clemson ran twice as many plays as Ohio State. Just unreal. But on top of that, the field position that they were put in was terrible. The whole game long, Clemson had way better field position than Ohio State. So when you factor that all in, I think that the defense did a stand-up job. I don't think the defense, you're not going to shut out an elite offense, and they did what they needed to win the game. They had a good enough performance for a win. Could it have been better? Sure, they could have shut out Clemson, but it was good enough to win the game. And it's unreasonable to ask them to do a shutout. So,
yep, that was the defense. You certainly can't be disappointed. Yeah, they gave up 31 points, but it's 17-0 at the half, and Ohio State comes out, stops Clemson to begin the third quarter. They get the ball. Mike Weber gets a first down. And then he fumbles the goddamn thing, and they turn it right back over. So the offense was just so repugnant, so putrid, just so vile and foul in that game. I just
tell us how you feel, Andy. Don't hold back.
Oh boy, here comes the ledge. I'm getting closer again. But now, you know what? Hey, it is what it is. It is what it is. And we, as Ohio State fans, it's a tough pill to swallow. We got to take it with a grain of salt. And let's hope that these kids feel this way, which I'm sure they do. If we as fans feel that way, think about the kids who are actually out there on the field.
Sure.
And I don't want to beat up a bunch of kids too bad. I'd rather beat up on the coaches. But, yeah, there were certainly, Mike Weber Jr., a 19-year-old kid, 20-year-old kid, however old he is. That's got to be tough. And I feel bad for him, but I'm sure he's going to take this as a learning experience and move forward.
Yep. Nope. Sounds good to me.
Well, sir, before we split on out of here, anything else we forgot to talk about, or something you'd like to adorn the fans with out there, the one and only fan? I'm not sure if Urban's going to listen to this version of the Buckeye Leafcast.
Yeah, he's too busy out there scouting out potential new assistant coaches, so hopefully. But yeah, no. Well, we could talk about the championship game. I don't know if you want to talk about that at all. I think that Clemson's got a shot.
Let me tell you what, after that, I mean, legitimately, and you've got to take your hat off to Clemson, though. I mean, they did – they are loaded. They were certainly the hungrier team on Saturday night, the more experienced team, just the better team, obviously, overall, than Ohio State was. And, I mean, they gave Alabama a hell of a game last year. So – I think this year, let me tell you what, Clemson's defense, Alabama, and Lane Kiffin, I mean, Lane Kiffin is as much of an idiot as he is an offensive guru. And Alabama, I mean, Washington, I think, exposed Alabama's offense a little bit. Oh, yeah. Held them to 24 points. I didn't think Alabama's offense looked all that great. I mean, they were good enough. But they're going up against a defense now that's way better than Washington, and I think that they are going to they're going to put the hurt on Jalen Hurts, and that was terrible. They are probably going to make it a long night for this Alabama offense, and let me tell you what, I'm not in disagreement, man. A lot of people out there are obviously saying that Clemson's got a legitimate shot, and after watching those two playoff games, it's hard not to think that Clemson might actually be the better team. But where it's going to get interesting is obviously Clemson's offense versus Alabama's defense.
Yeah.
And who's going to be the stronger team. What do you think?
Wow, I mean, that I'm really looking forward to see Clemson's offense versus Alabama's defense. It's going to be strength on strength, and it's going to be a fun matchup. But I mean, we saw that was strength on strength, in the Fiesta Bowl. Their offense versus Ohio State's defense, and I think Alabama's defense is better than Ohio State's, but it's not like light years better. It's not a night and day difference here. So it'll be interesting to see. They're going to be able to score on that defense is what I'm getting at. And the offense from Alabama is not great. I mean, they got 24, but just like Ohio State, what Ohio State did to its defense. They were Alabama. They were on the field the whole day. Their offense, the Washington's offense was not able to bail out its defense at all, and left their defense on the field all game. And they also had, Washington had terrible field position. They kept giving Alabama short fields over and over again. And keep in mind that they did get a defensive score in that game, so all of those points did not come from the offense.
Right.
So. What I'm getting at is, the offense did not look. I mean, when you consider that how long they were on the field and the field position they had, and that some of those points came from the defense, that was not a great performance from Alabama's offense. Now, I mean, Washington does have a good defense. Don't get me wrong, but is it as good as Clemson's? I don't think it's probably as good as Clemson's. We'll see. So, but that's going to be a fun one to watch. I think definitely Clemson has the horses to win this game. And, I mean, you're right. Last year was one for the ages. And in theory, I think Clemson's closed the gap from last year. So it's for me, it's like, flip a coin. I really don't know who's going to win this one. But I would not feel terrible betting against Saban in this one where, in most games – I would feel real bad putting my money on the other side against Saban. So, it should be a good one.
It's hard to, at this point.
You're not going to make a living betting against Saban. Let me just put it that way.
Yeah. It's hard to want to put money down against Nick Saban, but Dabo Swinney, I mean, he's proven that he is. I mean, he is right up there now. with Urban Meyer as being one of the top coaches in college football. Certainly Nick Saban is like the king on the throne, right?
Sure.
And then you've got, Urban Meyer and Dabo Swinney, Jimbo Fisher, kind of sitting off to the side like, we're the Knights or something, like they're not there yet on the throne, they're certainly high ranking enough that they're looking to overtake the throne at some point. But Dabo Swinney, you know what, man? He proved it last year, and he might prove it this year that he's got one of the best teams, if not the best team in the country. So it should be fun to watch. But I would have to say, if I had to pick one of the two, I think it's going to be very close. I think ultimately Alabama's defense does put a little bit of stranglehold on Deshaun Watson. I mean, if he's going to throw 2 picks against Ohio State's defense, Lord knows what he's going to do against Alabama. Mm-hmm. So I think that they're going to get to Deshaun Watson. They're going to force him into some bad throws, and it could be a long night for Clemson offensively. But I think their defense is going to put a hurt on Alabama's offense. And I think it's, I think last year's game was 40-34 or something like that was the final score. So it was fairly high scoring. I think this year it's going to be the opposite, where the defenses are really trying to gain a foothold on this game, and it could come down to a 17-15, 17-14, something like that. So I think Alabama wins in a fairly low scoring game, but it's still close. But I think Alabama comes out with the victory on this.
Yeah, gun to head, I would pick Alabama, but to me, it's pretty much it's a pick 'em. So.
Yeah. So, well, there we go, sir. Well, what else do you have to tell the fine folk out there about what's going on aside from the Buckeye Leafcast for you personally, sir?
Why, thank you. Well, I do have another podcast called Choice Conversations. So that is a personal development podcast where I talk about how you can improve your life in all the various areas of your life. So right now, if you're feeling a little depressed, you're looking at the window ledge fondly, come on over. We can talk about how you can find purpose and meaning in your life outside of football and find happiness. So I'd love to have you. It's choiceconversations.com.
Well, I think that I myself am going to have to hit you up for a choice conversation about how to get down off of this ledge. But you know what? No, I think given our conversation today, I think you've done a damn fine job, sir, of talking a little bit of sense into me. You brought up some great points, stuff I'm now kind of, taking in and thinking about and looking forward to the future. That's what I'm looking forward to. From here on out. So, but this is, it is kind of sad though, Mr. Stefanick, because this is probably, this is definitely our last podcast of the official 2016 football season. And I'm sure we'll probably be talking here in a couple months. We'll be doing a recruiting. They got signing day in a month here?
Yep.
So I believe on the first.
And then we'll do a spring game recap.
Spring game. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we definitely have some Ohio State football to talk about, but as far as the 2016 season is concerned, this is our last official Buckeye Leafcast of the season. So, once again, sir, I want to thank you for hopping on your end of the microphone all these Sundays and Mondays that we've been doing this year, and obviously the last couple of years, but this year in particular, it was fun. We got to talk about some crazy wins, a couple of bad losses, but ultimately a good solid season to talk about some Ohio State football. And I want to thank you, sir, for allowing me to come along for the ride with you and chit-chat about Ohio State football, because it's always fun to be able to do that and to be able to do it with someone such as yourself, the Intergalactic Buckeye Fan, a man who truly does know what he's talking about when it comes to Ohio State football and recruiting, coaching, the X's and O's. You really get into it, and I'm glad I'm able to talk to someone as knowledgeable about yourself instead of someone who just would pick their nose and wipe it on the microphone and go, yeah, okay, yeah, sure, that's great. I don't get that out of you, Mr. Stefanick. I get nothing but the best.
Well, you're too kind, Andy. Thank you so much for those very, very pleasant words. And I feel the same way. This has been a lot of fun recording the show together, and it's been a good season. And you just have to kind of put it in perspective. They overachieved. So what they did was actually pretty good. We never thought they would make the Final Four, and they did. So, if the basketball team, the Ohio State Buckeye hardballers, were made the Final Four, we wouldn't be upset if they got shellacked in the Final Four. So I'm just kind of taking it with that kind of attitude, because I had about the same expectations for the football Buckeyes this year as I did for the basketball ones. So yeah, we'll this has been a wonderful time, and I look forward to many more of our conversations together, Andy. Thank you so much.
Aptly put. Thank you, sir. Thank you, absolutely, 100%. So, like we normally like to do, we're going to leave him, as we always do, Mr. Stefanick, one last time for 2016. OH.
I-O.
Go Bucks.